What's up, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Storytime. And I was filming a video the other day. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Real Life Science. And on today's episode, I'm gonna show you all how physics works. I'm a little broken right now. I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself. I'm a game reviewer. How am I gonna do that with one hand? I could play Wii Sports Resort, but my Wii Remote is out of batteries. I could play Duck Hunt on the NES, but that involves a zapper. I'm still trying to cope from that trauma. There's gotta be something that I can do. When the hell did you get here? This is Kirby Air Ride, a spin-off title for the pink puffball in the form of a racing game. It's exactly what you would expect from a Kirby racing game. You jump on top of Warp Star and race through different courses alongside 3 other players. It's really weird. Kirby was slated to have a mainline title on the GameCube until it kept getting pushed back further and further and further until it finally released in 2010 as Kirby's Epic Yarn, nearly 3 years after the final game released on the GameCube. But in the meantime, we got Kirby Air Ride, and on a personal note, until a certain JRPG came out, this was my favorite game of all time. I used to sit down every morning to play this game for about 10 minutes, and the next thing I knew, it'd be 10 o'clock at night. It's funny, I've been playing this game for almost 17 years, and I still forget that Kirby Air Ride is 3 words instead of 2. Oh, and you can play this game with only one hand. Like most other Kirby titles before it, Kirby Air Ride was developed by HAL Laboratories, the same company that created the titular character in the first place. Leading the team was Kirby's creator, no, not you, Masahiro Sakurai. No wonder I love this game so much. Development started long before that though, in 1995, during beta testing for the Nintendo 64. This is the only footage I was able to find, but originally the development team had a whirlwind of ideas they were working with. One idea was Kirby riding on a skateboard, another had him rolling through a course like a 3D version of Kirby's Dream Course. It's really hard to find any sort of footage for this, but at this time, tons of ideas were either scrapped or taken out entirely. Although development began in 1995, it wasn't until 2001 when full development would go underway. Sakurai had just completed his time working on Super Smash Bros. Melee, and with his sole focus being on the next Kirby title, this is where we would start to see the Kirby Air Ride we would grow to know today. Kirby Air Ride released on July 11th, 2003 for the Nintendo GameCube, nearly 8 years after development initially started. Just like your typical racing game, this is a 4-player game where you race to the finish on top of Warp Stars and try to be the first to cross the finish line. It's a racing game, I don't think I need to explain this. But Kirby Air Ride is unconventional to racing games in nearly every bit of the sense, primarily because the entire game can be played with one button. Sucking up enemies, charging your boost, breaking your Warp Star, it's all done with one input. Seriously, you could use an Atari controller to play Kirby's Air Ride. I wish I was good at modding, I would have made it possible. Although I did manage to get a Mario Dance Pad working on it. Do it? Oh, f***ing bet. I can't tell you how hard that was to do. Kirby's Air Ride is the definition of a simplistic racer, and this completely encompasses the original design philosophy for the entire series. You press one button in any Kirby game and you understand the entire gimmick that Kirby was built upon. Kirby Air Ride might be extremely simplistic, but it is an absolute blast for what little game is actually here. However, gameplay would just get boring if it were overly simplistic. Instead of creating a more complicated control scheme with more options to make gameplay fun, Kirby Air Ride builds off this simplicity with the inclusion of air ride machines. See, we all know Kirby from his famous Warp Star. Anytime Kirby has to make an entrance somewhere, he comes through riding on this thing. No kidding, even his entire planet is shaped like a star. But these air ride machines are different vehicles with varying attributes and playstyles that drastically change the depth of Kirby Air Ride's gameplay. Your Warp Star resembles your standard racing game. Press A to boost, rounds corners fairly well, it's your typical run-of-the-mill machine. Then you have the Wheelie Scooter. This one's a bit slower, but has better acceleration, and when you jump off a platform, you get an insane burst of speed. The Swerve Star stops and starts immediately, but can't turn unless it's completely stopped, which sounds like a nightmare, but trust me, this is one of the most fun stars in the game. And the developers really push their creativity here. There's over 15 different vehicles to choose from that really push the idea of one-button gameplay. Sadly, there's only 3 different modes to choose from, which is where a lot of the criticisms of this game comes from. You have Air Ride, your typical standard 4-player race, Top Ride, a top-down race that resembles a tabletop experience, and City Trial, a collection-based free-for-all, which is probably the main reason you're watching this video. And I'm going to talk about City Trial in just a bit, but first I need to talk about the other 2 Air Ride is the first mode we have here, and it's your basic simplistic race. There's nothing to this mode at all, but it does allow me to explain the basic controls of the game. The game moves you forward automatically, no buttons are required, and the whole race can be completed without ever actually touching a button on your controller. Steering involves tilting the control stick left and right, but during jumps, holding up and down allows you to glide through the air, which can really help boost your speed in specific instances, especially with the Jet Star, a machine that gains a boost every time you lift off from a jump. By tapping left and right on the control stick, you can perform a quick spin, allowing you to knock out enemies and do damage to opponents opponents, which is another thing. You can actually damage and knock out your opponents in this game, leaving them incapable of finishing a race. This option can be toggled on and off though, along with a variety of other options as well. Doing damage to your opponents can be done by using the copy ability. Just like in the mainline series, pressing A near an enemy allows you to suck them up and use them to take out opponents. I feel this was the best implementation for the team. It really gives that kart racer feel that I feel they were going for, plus tying into what makes Kirby, well, Kirby. Sword Kirby's probably the first one we all think about, but of course, who doesn't call this Link Kirby? That doesn't mean we can forget about the others though. Fire Kirby, Winged Kirby, Needle Kirby, and even Plasma Kirby from Superstar makes a return. This is personally my favorite. Just like in the original game, you could wiggle the control stick around to build up electric power and release blasts of electricity to your opponents. These stages are beautiful too, although it's hard to tell if these could actually resemble Kirby stages. I mean, these were the first high-definition stages we ever got in the series. Remember, we didn't have a mainline title for the GameCube. The last mainline title we got was Nintendo 64's The Crystal Shards. I really do think these do the series justice though. The enemies and air ride machines just feel natural in this world, and the simplistic nature of the levels is easy to look at and understand. This is a fire track, this one is edgy, this one looks like a theme park. But even so, these tracks are a ton of fun to play through. I think my favorite's gotta be Celestial Valley. It's got a ton of dynamics in its layout. One minute you're crossing a bridge into this tunnel, then you're navigating through this river until you skyrocket up this waterfall. I love the design and environment here. It feels like they're always throwing something new your way. Sadly though, there's only 9 courses in the game, with the last just being a figure 8 style drag race. I feel like this was added in last minute. No enemies, a simple layout. However, I do feel like the stage itself is a reference to Final Destination with its neon grid aesthetic in front of a dark void. I feel like this was the main thing holding Kirby Air Ride back. You can breeze through and beat every course in under 25 minutes, and with only 2 laps per race, many times the race was over before you knew it. Top Ride is up next, and here we have a top-down view of the race where all 4 characters are visible on the same screen. It's a little different. Instead of the traditional sucking up enemies, Kirby instead grabs items and power-ups scattered throughout the course, but other than that, it's pretty much the same but in top-down form. Now, I'm sure a whole 3 people will get mad at me for saying this, but this is easily the most forgettable part of the game. It's not bad by any means, but the rest of the game is just way more fleshed out than this. Top Ride to me honestly feels like an extended Mario Party minigame, which, well, also makes sense since Mario Party is designed with that level of simplicity as well. It doesn't help that the controls are on par with Mario Party's as well. I just do not like the way these machines handle at all. I can't completely criticize it though. I do like that all players are on the same screen and can directly affect other players. You can lob objects over walls and spin players onto other portions of the map. Top Ride does feel like the make your friends hate you experience that Mario Party provides, but if you really want to make your friends hate you, oh god, just thinking about it makes me want to jump out of my seat. But then we come on to City Trial, and this is what everybody refers to as the piece de resistance, or the coup de grace, or whatever the Japanese word is for really good. This is the reason people love this game. City Trial is essentially the battle royale of Kirby Air Ride, except for the actual battle royale, but we'll get to that. City Trial has you dropped into this fairly sizable city to explore to your heart's content. However, the goal here is to collect power-ups to improve your air ride machines. At the end of each game, all players will be entered into a randomly selected minigame to compete to win, and whoever comes out on top is the victor, just as long as you have the right star. As simple as this mode is, this is honestly not just my favorite game mode in Kirby, but video game history as a whole, and I don't say that lightly. No, I don't expect other people to agree. This is my opinion and mine alone, but City Trial is just an area full of life, with every single game you play feeling different in each way. But what makes City Trial so special? And let's just start off by talking about the city itself. The landmarks here don't make any kind of sense whatsoever, but drop into this map for 2 seconds and you have the whole thing memorized. An active volcano, a railway system, the water wheel, it even has wispy woods in the forest. And you can make him cry. Who knew torture could be so fun? If that wasn't enough, the city is always changing as random events and encounters keep the players on their feet. Dynablade from the main series can come down and attack players. A UFO can make its way to the city and you can climb on top of it. I always thought this was Sakurai's little nod to the Earthbound series, which I'm sure I'm not the only one who thought about this. Not all of these events are winners though. There's the one where items can suddenly start bouncing, and you're lying to me if you said you actually enjoyed this. There are a few of these events that can be more aggravating than they are fun, but you know what, Mom? Fine, I'll eat the crummy vegetables as long as I can get to the dessert. But nothing in City Trial to me is more fun and rewarding than the legendary Dragoon and Hydra. Now, rewind for a sec. Remember how I said there were over 15 air ride machines to choose from? Well, there's 2 machines that only appear in City Trial mode, and that is the 2 legendary stars. These can be acquired by running through the city and destroying the red boxes, which can obtain one of 3 legendary pieces that you use to assemble the legendary machines. But it's all a game of chance, baby. Sometimes they both show up, sometimes they never show up, but these machines are legendary by all means. Hydra is the fastest machine in the entire game. It takes a while to boost up, but once it's fully charged and it's roaring, it's able to achieve speeds of over 100 miles per hour and can destroy pretty much anything in its path. But Dragoon is the real high flyer here. Literally, when you get Dragoon, you can fly forever. Seriously, if you don't believe me, take it to long jump and you'll see what I mean. From the second you assemble this machine, you are in for the time of your life. If you thought Dragoon was an overpowered item in Smash, oh man, you don't even know. This baby will demolish the competitions, which I still haven't actually talked about. At the end of each stage, you are shown your score of how many power-ups you have found, how powerful your machine is, which machine you have. It's very similar to Smash Run, except way more fun and came out 10 years earlier. But after this, you compete in a random event, proving your test of might and, might I say, luck to determine who has the better star and skills to come out as the victor. The stages are all set to random, so it's pretty much a game of chance to guess which one you're going to compete in, so the goal is to try to maximize your star for all challenges. I feel like the one most people remember is the long jump and the high jump. It's just a straight highway to see who can fly the farthest. Easy question, it's Dragoon. It'll always be Dragoon. We also have Destruction Derby and Kirby Melee. This is pretty much just a straight test of the player's power. In Kirby Melee, it's your goal to kill as many enemies as possible, while in Destruction Derby, it's a battle royale to see who can get the most KOs. See, I told you we'd come back around to this eventually. But my personal favorite is Target Flight. It's fairly simple. You just run to the end of a drag strip and try to aim for the highest score. Each square represents a higher number, with the 100 square having a closing metal door for the added difficulty. There's also versus King Dedede, which I just want to say, why is he 10 times bigger here than in the normal game? He's a playable racer in Air Ride. This just doesn't make sense to me. I've thought about for a long time why City Trial is such an addictive mess, and I think I've finally figured it out. Kirby Air Ride is very similar to Mario Party, and I know I said that before and it's an odd comparison, but let me explain. Everyone starts on the same page in Mario Party. Everyone has 10 coins, everyone has a set amount of items, and the same tools to utilize. But as the game progresses, nearly every single aspect of it is RNG. The amount of spaces you move, the mini games you play, the items that you collect, it's all completely randomized. Sure, you can dig into the source code and try to decipher the possible odds that an event will occur, but at the end of the day, for the mainline audience, the core of the game is trying to use the RNG to your advantage to come out on top, and City Trial does the exact same thing. What power-ups and stat boosts are gonna appear? I have no idea. Let's just locate all the blue boxes. Here's a new event. Oh goodness, better go get all the power-ups I can. You spend the entire time building the perfect machine for a drag race, but then all of a sudden it's a long jump minigame. Because City Trial is constantly able to throw you a new twist in every single run through, trying to beat those odds and come out on top is exactly what has you coming back. City Trial is by far my favorite game mode in all of video game history. But I still don't think it's the best thing Sakurai added in this game. When you start Kirby Air Ride for the first time, you have 8 tracks, 1 warp star, and 4 colors of Kirby. That's it. So Sakurai, actually Sakurai's wife, that's right, I bet you didn't know Sakurai's wife was a graphic designer, helped him create what I think is the most underappreciated mechanic in all of video games, the checklist. And yes, I do think this is better than any of the things that Sakurai has done in the Smash series. Here we have a blank checklist. There's no way of actually knowing what any of the goals are, as they're all hidden. But the more you play the game, the more squares get checked off and the more unlockables you obtain. But what's even better is the more you unlock, the more adjacent squares tell you exactly what the next objective is. This is the perfect incentive to constantly push you to do more and more missions, unlocking more colors, abilities, machines. It's so simplistic. It's such a simple concept, and I don't know if I've just overlooked this in other games or if it just hasn't been replicated, but I've never seen this anywhere else. Except in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, but I don't think that really counts because this was a game directed by the same man. So where's the f***ing sequel? As unfortunate as it is to say, Kirby Air Ride didn't live up to the expectations Nintendo wanted. The game sold 1.2 million units, which was not bad for the GameCube era. But being the only Kirby game on the console did not leave a lasting impression for Nintendo, who is pretty much at fault here. 2 weeks after Kirby Air Ride released came a game known as F-Zero GX, the flagship racing game of Nintendo, well, former flagship racing game. I'm sure it's safely hidden in a time capsule somewhere. But 3 months after that was Mario Kart Double Dash, one of the highest selling games on the GameCube. Now tell me, did you really think your Kirby spin-off game was gonna do well against 2 of Nintendo's major IPs? Probably the reason one of them is dead. On top of this, the game didn't receive the best reviews. Critics praised the music and design of the game, but stated that it was overly simple, which, to be fair, they have a point. Although City Trial is the highlight of the game, only 8 tracks in Nebula Belt really hurt the replay value of the Air Ride mode. It's still a fun time, but when you can run through the entirety of the game's tracks in under 20 minutes if you're good enough, it's kind of a problem. On top of that, Kirby's basically the only character in the game, with the most variation being a color swap. King Dedede and Meta Knight are also here, but their gameplay just is not as interesting when you compare them to the other Air Ride machines. With all of these reasons combined, it's just not looking good for a sequel to Kirby Air Ride. In March 2020, in one of Sakurai's weekly Famitsu columns, when asked about the prospect of a sequel to the beloved title, Sakurai gave, well, a vague answer, not even mentioning Kirby Air Ride when directly questioned about it. And I can see why. Sakurai is no longer with HAL Laboratories and actually left to start Sora Limited right after Kirby Air Ride's release. He stated that he felt he was under too much pressure and grew bored of consistently being asked to push out sequel after sequel, wanting to branch off and do his own thing. I wonder if he still feels the same way. Sadly, by the looks of it, a successor to Kirby Air Ride is not bound to happen anytime soon. Like I said, I love this game so dearly, it's a personal favorite of mine, but the original game just did not live up to Nintendo's standards. Maybe we'll see an HD remaster, or maybe we'll finally get the Nintendo Virtual Console and see a digital. That'll never happen. But with that being said, I am officially announcing the Kirby Air Ride 2 Kickstarter program. I'm gonna get this game going, and I'll put my money where my mouth is. But before I can do that, I've got to deal with the US healthcare system and its medical bills, so let's see what the damage is. I could fund Kirby Air Ride 2 with this. My feet's too big for this shit.